Well, good morning, and thank you for coming out this morning. My name is David Perdue. I'm the relatively new U.S. Ambassador to the People's Republic of China. I'm honored to be here today with some really pioneers from the United States House of Representatives. As a matter of fact, this delegation you see here is the first U.S. congressional delegation from the U.S. House since 2019. On Sunday, we met with Premier Lee. Yesterday, we met with Minister Dong Jun. And we've also met with Minister He Feng. We've had great dialogues, and we look forward to more in the rest of this week. With us today, we have Representative Adam Smith, who is the ranking member from the House of Representatives Armed Services Committee. He's from the great state of Washington, and he's got 28 years in Congress. So this is he's been here many times, and he's been a great leader of this delegation this week. Also from the great state of Washington, we have Michael Baumgartner, who is also on the Foreign Relations Committee in the House of Representatives. And then we have Ro Khanna from the great state of California, also on the Armed Services Committee, and then Chrissy Houlihan from the great state of Pennsylvania, also on the Armed Services Committee. Our purpose this week is to open the dialogue between the great country of China and the great country of the United States. One of the problems we've had is after COVID, we have not had a lot of interaction. And so this week is a great opportunity for us to open those doors and channels of communication. We had a great breakfast this morning with the prior ambassador, Sui Tiankai, and just a tremendous conversation this morning. So with that, I'm going to introduce Congressman Adam Smith to make a couple comments, and we'll take a few questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. I really appreciate that. And I want to start by a couple of thank yous to Ambassador Perdue and to his team at the United States Embassy. This is an incredibly talented group of people that are representing the United States well, and their interactions with the Chinese government and the Chinese people, I think, are crucial to what the ambassador referenced about the need to improve dialogue and improve understanding between our two countries. I also want to thank the Chinese government, the leadership. They've been very generous with their time. We've had robust and very helpful meetings, which I very much appreciate. They have welcomed us in. I thank my colleagues for joining me on this trip. I think the ambassador made it very clear what we're trying to accomplish. We want to open up the lines of communication. Without any question, China and the United States are the two most powerful countries in the world. Our relationship is going to be the most consequential relationship in terms of what the world is going to be like for decades to come. It is really important that we work to strengthen that relationship and better understand each other. It is absolutely the case that we have disagreements, but everybody has disagreements. You have to set up mechanisms for being able to talk about those disagreements and resolve them in the most reasonable way possible. And I feel strongly that there has not been enough communication between leaders in the U.S. and leaders in China, and we want to work to fix that problem, to open up the lines of communication and begin that dialogue. I don't presume to know what the answers are. How would we resolve all of those disagreements? I don't think anybody does. But I know we won't resolve them if we don't start having a better conversation about it and a better understanding of each other. Now, as mentioned, I'm the ranking member on the House Armed Services Committee. I've served on that committee now for going on 29 years. And the military-to-military relationship between China and the U.S. is of particular concern. China is the most rapidly growing military and the most rapidly growing nuclear power in the world. The U.S. has the biggest military in the world and the biggest nuclear arsenal. It is dangerous for us not to be having regular communications about our capabilities and intentions so we understand each other and so that miscalculations and misunderstandings don't lead to larger problems. So that's our purpose. We want to open up a dialogue, begin the process of getting our two countries to better understand each other, better get along, and then hopefully work together to help solve some of the problems that the world faces. We still have, massive issues of poverty and hunger across the world, terrorism, instability in a bunch of places in the world, protecting the environment to make sure that we can preserve this planet. These are all things that both China and the U.S. bring a lot to the effort to solve those problems. It would be so much better if we could work more closely together on them. So again, I thank you for your hospitality, for welcoming this delegation, and I am happy to take questions. or she is happy to take questions, I should say.
Let's start with Stephen John from CNN.
Thank you, Stephen Jones, CNN. So, Congressman Smith, I think I read in your remarks and statements, you raised quite a few issues that are U.S. priorities with the Chinese, including fentanyl and rare earths. But I don't know if you noticed, in their readout about the phone call between the two presidents last Friday, they did not mention fentanyl. They did not mention rare earth. So that seems to indicate quite a different list of priorities. So my questions to you is, like, how much do you think a visit like yours and your conversations could move the needle on those issues, especially when it comes to fentanyl and rare earths? And what are some of their main concerns or barriers for such cooperation as they have mentioned to you? And related to this, there is some analysts saying the Chinese have increasingly feel they hold the upper hand in dealing with the U.S. and all those issues. Did you get a sense of that? And how much of that do you think is them taking advantage of a polarized political environment in the U.S.? Thank you.
That's a lot of questions in there. If I miss one of them, feel free to remind me. Look, but I mean, the basic gist of the whole question, it sort of gets at the core problem. There's a lot of misunderstandings on both sides. If you sat down with Chinese leadership and asked them, okay, what are the issues? Where are you at? Where's the U.S. at? What's most important? What's least important? You would absolutely get a different set than if you sat down with the United States leaders and asked that same question. It's the basic of negotiations. As chair of the Armed Services Committee, I negotiated 4 different defense bills on 100 different issues. And many of those conversations started with, person here, person there, and that's where you start. And then you work towards each other. I've worked on legislation. I've worked on local issues. It's the same thing. You have to be willing to start the process of saying, okay, this is where I'm coming from. Where are you coming from? And we're not even at that point yet. We're still sort of talking past each other. So I think the things your question brings up are the things that we're here to try and solve and to have that conversation. This is what's important to us. China has things that are important to them. And like I said, I don't presume that there's some, okay, snap our fingers and we'll automatically resolve this. But I know how this process starts. And I have seen, as the diplomats here and my colleagues have seen as well, many things that seemed intractable and impossible, that once you actually started talking from the standpoint of let's try and resolve this, it is unbelievable what you can accomplish when you do that. And I think that's what China and the U.S. needs to do, because you pointed out some of the differences. We need to, I guess the joke is not necessarily get on the same page, but at least get in the same book as a starting point.
Janice Mackey-Frayer from
sorry, let me
Sure, go ahead.
one thing to that. You mentioned the president's call with President Xi. They had a great call. They're looking forward to getting together, as President Trump said, potentially in the near future, but certainly next year, early. These topics you bring up are actively being negotiated now. We just got back from Madrid, and you see the readout on that. We talked to Minister He Lefeng this week about that. So there's ongoing conversation. I would say that the relationship between President Xi and President Trump is actually very good and very encouraging right now.
Janice Mackey-Frayer from NBC.
Janice Mackey-Frayer from NBC. When you talk about this level of communication and opening up these lines of communication, what is it that you're looking for? Is it to return to a level of communication between the two sides that existed in the past, or are you looking to open up new and different channels of communication? Given the experience that you bring to this congressional visit, was there a time when things were better, or is this what you would say a critical stage, even crisis?
Yeah, no, two things. One, I think it's going to be new and different because both China and the U.S. are entirely different in entirely different places now than they were even a decade ago, much less 20, 30, 40 years ago. And yeah, I mean, the relationships have been in different places. I'm not a historian about all of that. I know in the past it has been better, but it's going to be new. It's going to be different because our two countries are in an entirely different place. And then we have to look at sort of what the broad issues are that we're trying to resolve. Certainly the economic issues are going to be important. The trade imbalances, our different perceptions of that. Our two militaries, what are our goals in the world? How do we get along? And then some of the conflicts in the world. How can we work together, on conflict in the Middle East, the conflict that continues between Russia and Ukraine, the challenges we have with North Korea. So I would say it's going to be in a different place than it was in the past, and that is where we need to go.
Ryan from FT.
Hi, from the FT. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us. On the TikTok deal, has it become clear if ByteDance will continue to have any role in maintaining or updating the new TikTok US algorithm? And what would be your view if ByteDance does continue to be involved in any way?
Yeah, it has not become clear to me. I can't speak for others. Others who are bigger experts on that and where it's at. My understanding is I don't think that has been 100% resolved. I would say, and I think I would speak for the United States Congress and for the government, we would have concerns. The concern is basically we want to make sure that there is privacy and security, that it's not in jeopardy. How they resolve that, frankly, goes over my head, both technologically and in terms of knowledge in the negotiations. I'm not privy to those negotiations, but it is an important issue without question.
Thank you. Colin Murphy from Bloomberg.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that, in terms of the TikTok deal, the White House is saying that it's a done deal. In your interactions with the Chinese counterparts, did you have the same impression that the Chinese also understand this is a done deal? What are the next steps for finalizing this deal, both in the U.S. and in China, in your view? And just to add on the rare earths, did you get any sort of assurances from the Chinese side that the process is going smoothly or will continue to go smoothly? I ask because as recently as last week, we had European companies saying that they are still facing challenges in securing supply of rare earths from the Chinese side. Thank you.
On that last question, I don't think we resolved the rare earth question. I think that still needs to be worked on, without question. I think there are still challenges. I would not personally characterize how the Chinese officials felt about the TikTok deal. I would leave that to them. We discussed it, but not in great detail. We discussed it more along the lines of this needs to be resolved. So I can't give you any insights as to how the Chinese officials view it.
I think we have time for two more questions. Let's start with Lori from Reuters.
Given that there have been
Coming at you from the other side.
Thanks. Given that there have been some high-profile visits by the U.S. House to Taiwan in recent years, has China asked that the U.S. refrain from more of such visits to Taiwan in future? And if so, what was your approach to China's requests? And could you give more details on what you discussed regards to Taiwan militarily as well?
Yeah, they didn't ask us about that. That issue did not come up.
And last question, Yoko from Wall Street Journal.
Hi, Yoko Kubota with the Wall Street Journal. Wanted to ask if you could elaborate some more on the military-related discussions. Beijing has been quite assertive when it comes to showing off its military power these days. The parade was a good example. What messages did you get from the Chinese side? You spoke with the defense minister. And just one more question. We have two lawmakers representing the state of Washington. I was wondering if Boeing aircraft came up in the discussions during your meetings as well. Thank you.
Yeah, on the Boeing question, I don't remember specifically. I know it came up as a discussion. It's been a while since Boeing airplanes have been sold here in China. We'd like to get that deal done. And I think that's all across the United States, not just those of us from the state of Washington. It's a good company, good product. Hope to get back to them selling airplanes to China. And sorry, remind me what the first question was again. Oh, yeah, defense. Yeah, I mean, it's basically, China, I think their perspective is the same perspective that most countries have, which is they want their military to be strong enough to defend their interests, which, is logical and makes perfect sense. What I think we want to get to the point is where China understands that now they are such a large military, they need to have more conversations with the other large militaries in the world for basic deconfliction. I mean, we've seen this. With our ships, our planes, their ships, their planes coming entirely too close to one another. We need to have a better conversation about deconflicting those things. And also, capabilities. There's such a rapid change in technology in terms of what AI and drone warfare and cyber and space. It is moving so rapidly and the innovation is happening so quickly. The risk of a misunderstanding of capabilities on one side or the other is great. And I think there needs to be communication about that. You can just take nuclear weapons as an example. At the height of the Cold War, We had regular conversations, regular treaties with the Soviet Union. I think that was very, very important. One of the things we really want to encourage the Chinese, their position still is, you're so much more powerful than we are. There's no point in talking about it at this point. Yeah, I think when you're getting up into the hundreds, close to 1,000 on nuclear weapons, it's time to start having a conversation about it to make sure that we understand each other and we don't stumble in to any sort of conflict. So I hope we can ramp up that dialogue so that level of understanding can lead to cooperation. And I just want to close sort of where I started. I think where we want to get is we want to get to the place where China and the U.S. are working together to make the world a better place. Yes, there will be competition, but as two great powers that really don't have a fundamental, intractable conflict, we ought to be able to work together on some of these problems that are in both of our countries' interests, but also in the interests of the world.
Thank you, everybody. That's what we have time for today.
Let me add one thing on the Boeing issue, if I might, Yoko. I personally had the privilege of being able to visit with them last week in Tianjin in their factory. And this is a great story of cooperation between the United States and China, of a commercial operation where they're here in China making products to be sold on products that will be sold in China. This is a huge order, and it's very important to the president. It's very important to Boeing. I think it's very important to China. And I think that we're in the last days of that, or weeks of that negotiation, and we're hopeful that that will turn out to be the case. Let me just say one more thing. I want to be sure to tell you guys how grateful we are for the audiences that we've had this week. Premier Lee was very gracious with his time. Minister Dong Jun was as well. And then we had an active and ongoing trade conversation with Minister He Lifeng yesterday. So these are productive conversations, but I also want to commend these members of the House of Representatives. This is not an easy thing for them to do. They will take some political hits potentially back home. But I can tell you that from our conversations, they're not soft on China. They're not hard on China. They want peace and stability, which is what China is asking for and what we're asking for. So I commend them on this trip and commit that there will be many more of these trips to come. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.